At the southern tip of Manhattan, where the city meets the water, once stood two buildings that were never meant to be monuments. They were designed to be machines. Machines for money. Machines for movement. Machines for global trade. But over time, the World Trade Center became something far bigger than commerce. It became a symbol of America's place in the world, and later, a test of whether architecture could carry memory, grief, and resilience at the same time. This is not just the story of towers rising and falling. This is the story of how a nation chose to rebuild meaning through structure. Welcome to Structory. Before the skyline changing height, before the symbolism, before the tragedy. The World Trade Center began as a problem. In the 1950s, Lower Manhattan was losing power. Businesses were drifting uptown. Global trade was growing, but New York's infrastructure was aging. The solution wasn't a single building. It was an idea. What if global commerce could be concentrated vertically? What if trade itself had an address? That question led to a radical architectural decision. Build not one tower, but two identical giants. Not for beauty, not for symbolism, but for efficiency. The original twin towers were engineered like nothing before them. Instead of thick walls or traditional frames, they used a perimeter tube system, dense columns on the outside, a massive concrete core inside. This allowed enormous open floor plates. No columns blocking offices, no wasted space. These weren't monuments. They were high-rise factories for finance. At 110 stories each, they weren't just tall. They were statements. They said global trade belonged here. They said New York was the center of the world. And yet, despite their scale, the towers were intentionally plain. No ornate crowns, no decorative facades, just repetition, steel, and rhythm. Power through simplicity. But here's what most people miss. The towers weren't built to last forever. They were built to perform. Architecture at its most utilitarian. Until the world forced it to mean something else. On September 11, 2001, architecture stopped being abstract. Steel met impact. Design met reality. Systems met failure. And when the towers fell, something unprecedented happened. The absence became louder than the buildings ever were. The empty footprint in Lower Manhattan wasn't just physical, it was psychological. So the question facing America wasn't simply what to build next. It was, should anything rise here at all? Rebuilding the World Trade Center was never about replacement. It was about response. Every architectural decision became symbolic. Height mattered, but so did restraint. Strength mattered, but so did humility. Security mattered, but so did openness. The new centerpiece, One World Trade Center, reflects this tension perfectly. Its height, 1,776 feet, is not accidental. It ties directly to American independence. But unlike the original towers, its form transforms as it rises. A square base, becoming an octagon, ending as a spire. This wasn't just design, it was narrative. From grounded strength to aspirational reach. The building's core is massive. Reinforced concrete, protected systems, redundant safety layers. This tower was designed knowing fear existed. But the memorial below tells a different architectural story. Instead of rebuilding upward on the same footprints, the original tower locations were preserved as voids. Square pools, endless water, names carved into bronze. Architecture through absence. Nothing here tries to replace what was lost. It acknowledges it. This is what makes the World Trade Center unique in architectural history. It exists in two timelines at once. One that represents global ambition, and one that represents collective memory. The site is no longer just about trade, it's about endurance. The original towers symbolized America's economic dominance. The rebuilt complex symbolizes something more fragile and more powerful. Resilience without forgetting. Strength without denial. And that may be the most difficult thing architecture has ever been asked to do. Because buildings don't just shape skylines, they shape how nations remember. The World Trade Center didn't simply change how skyscrapers are engineered. It changed how architecture is expected to speak. Not just about power, but about responsibility. Not just about height, but about meaning. If you want to understand a country, Don't just look at what it builds at its peak. Look at what it rebuilds after it falls. This is Structory. And this is the architecture of resilience.